Get to that coming up in an hour. For right now, we want to talk about what we have in store for us later on in the world of real sports, not just simulated sports. And of course, to help us do that, we bring in a couple of our favorites, Full-Time Felix, Julian Edlow, and Matt LaMarca. We're going to get into a little chaser fade, Major League Baseball, DK Sportsbook, and DFS plays, all the same. How are you, fellas?
We're great. How are you, Kaufman?
I'm great. I'm sorry. Are you not used to actually being greeted? Talk a little bit?
No, I hate greetings.
It was a soft toss. I didn't know if Julian was going to speak first, if I was going to speak first. If I didn't know any better, I would say you weren't very prepared today, Kaufman.
It's I'm pretty much as prepared as I typically am. Just show and go is how we like to roll around here. And we are more prepared probably than the Red Sox at least were yesterday, because they show up to the ballpark, they're getting ready for their opener against the Orioles, and then the weather takes over and it turns out a postponement due to rain in the forecast. So they will go at it this afternoon, 2:10 Eastern instead. And if we're taking a look at the pitching matchup, you have Nathan Eovaldi, John Means. Of course, Eovaldi starting with Eduardo Rodriguez sideline, starting the year on the injured list for Boston. 15-3 in the captain spot in this showdown contest. Jules, is he worth paying up for there?
It looks a little aggressive to me at first, but then you start looking around at, all right, like, who are my other options here? And you also look at how Eovaldi did against Baltimore last season. He had some struggles with him initially as a member of the Red Sox, but last year against Baltimore, 3 starts, 3-0, a 0.95 ERA. He only allowed 2 runs in 19 innings, 18 strikeouts. Like, he was pretty good against them. And I know everybody's down on the Red Sox right now after that season, and maybe Baltimore's a little bit better, but I think this is a strong spot for Eovaldi to start the year off. A guy that wasn't initially even supposed to be the opening day starter, but Eduardo Rodriguez not in a position to do that yet again. So I don't want to spend it on John Means. I think that's a little too contrarian for me, and I'm not sure I want to do it on a bat, particularly a bat like Devers or Bogarts, who's even more than the starting pitcher. So I think kind of by default, I did talk myself into Eovaldi after not being there initially.
Well, and as it turns out, LaMarca, Eovaldi starting the opener for Boston for the second straight year. Obviously, the pandemic couple-month season last year, and now here we are with Eovaldi taking over for Rodriguez sideline once again, but still 15-3 in the captain spot. Jules has talked himself into it. Could you, are you chasing him at captain here despite other options?
I'm going to fade it. I would never fight you too hard for rostering a starting pitcher in the captain spot. I do think that they have, for the most part, the higher median expectations than any of the individual bats, but the ceiling is what gets me. I just don't see enough upside with Eovaldi, and I don't hate this Orioles lineup. I know they weren't good last year, but you give them back Trey Mancini, Ryan Mountcastle, big-time prospect. I could tell myself a story that they're at least a little bit better this year. I think that there are some solid bats to target for the Red Sox in particular that stand out to me as better values in the captain spot. So I would rather go with a Hunter Renfroe, a Kike Hernandez, somebody like that. But again, I wouldn't fight you too hard if like Julian, you talked yourself into Eovaldi.
LaMarca, let's move on to the main slate. You have 6 games starting at 7 Eastern. Trevor Bauer, of course, debuting for his new team, is very expensive. He's 10-5, so, you could justify it, unless you're Steve Buchanan, who says that last year was a fluke. How do you feel about him tonight, or do you like a cheaper option?
What is it with Steve and just hating good baseball players?
And everything, really.
I'm going to pass on Trevor Bauer. I think if you want to take a shot on him in a tournament, go for it. This Rockies offense, I don't care that they had a good day yesterday. They kind of stink. But you look at the Rockies, they are implied for the 3rd highest total on the slate, 4.8 runs. I don't want to target a pitcher at 10,500 who's expected to give up nearly 5 runs. Coors Field, even if it's not the hitter's paradise early in the year that it is in the summer months. I still just don't think you want to make a habit of targeting players pitching in that environment. So I would go to some other options before I went to Bauer. I do think he probably has the highest ceiling at the pitcher position, even in Coors Field, but there are just some other guys that stand out as better options.
Chase or fade Bauer, Jules?
Yeah, I'm going to fade him. On the surface, a guy for 10-5 at Coors is pretty easy to pass on. But then you look at the rest of the options, opening day, all these aces lined up. That's one day in the past, and it's already completely changed what these slates look like in terms of the pitchers that you can roster. And Bauer has that strikeout upside like Matt kind of touched on. So that's there. I mean, you can get sucked into just like it's the first start of the year. So you look at everybody's fantasy points per game right on DraftKings. You see Bauer's like double everybody with 30 fantasy points per game. But taking I don't hate Bauer quite as much as Steve does, but taking a small page out of his book, like he did, those schedules last year were just, you played the same teams over and over again. And Bauer didn't play the best teams and performed very well, which he's a good pitcher. He's going to pitch well, but things get tougher. The Rockies just scored 8 runs in a Kershaw start to get the year going without Arenado, with everybody down on them. So paying 10-5 here is not something I'm really interested in. It just does get tougher to recommend, like, okay, so you're not rostering him. So who are you paying for? I would be more interested in like a Blake Snell, probably.
Pablo.
Who?
Pablo Lopez, baby.
So I was going down to him. We had a 1-0 game, obviously, that Tampa won in Miami yesterday. Pablo Lopez showed some upside last year. That's another guy I could talk myself into. Merrill Kelly pitched really well against the Padres in a couple of starts last year. I don't know if I'm going to, the Padres are a different animal this year, I think. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but it is a slate to kind of balance off with pitching, I think, and not pay 10-5 at Coors.
Jules, you got some high-priced bats, a few of the faces of baseball, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Fernando Tatis Jr., who is, of course, very well paid now. Now, trying to establish who you should go with and pay up for. Trout, it's tough to ignore. If you like me, if you like BVP, you can look at him at Dallas Keuchel and the White Sox today. 15 career hits, couple of home runs. You going to chase Trout in this matchup?
Out of those top 3 guys, I think Trout at 5'9" stands out to me the most. I do think maybe it's a day that we can, and not that you're going to save, but you go down to 5'8" on Seager, you go down to 5'7" on Bellinger, like still very expensive, but those Dodgers lefties going up against a righty at Coors Field. I mean, Bellinger hit a home run yesterday that turned into a single because of whatever baseball rules are in place when you pass somebody on the bases. I don't know. That stinks if you had Bellinger. It stinks if you bet on the Dodgers like I did, who maybe should have had another run. But yeah, I think that it's either Trout for me or you take the lefties on the Dodgers. I don't think I'm going to wind up on like Tatis or Betts going over $6K for one of those guys.
Zach's man, you going to chase Trout as the best option here?
No, I'm interested in Mookie. Mookie, like he's a righty facing a righty, but he is a classic reverse splits hitter. I mean, yes, last year his splits were incredibly drastic. He was a 181 WRC plus against righties and a 56 WRC plus against lefties. That's a bit overstated compared to what he did, what he's done for the rest of his career. But that's against a right-hander in Coors Field. I have no problem paying the 6.2. The problem is, stacking the Dodgers in general is going to be very tough. They're super expensive, but I do think that, a leadoff hitter with the kind of pop that we've seen from Betts in the best hitting park in baseball, like I can definitely talk myself into that at 6,200.
Maddie, who are you going to chase as value option tonight?
Yeah, I think you can go over to the other side of that matchup. There are some interesting guys on the Rockies who are pretty cheap. Ryan McMahon, for example, 3,600. Expected to bat second. I know you probably don't feel very comfortable targeting Trevor Bauer, but if you just take the pitcher's name away and you think about, okay, I can get a guy batting second in the lineup for the team with the second highest or the third highest implied team total on the slate, who's only 3,600, who's on the positive side of his splits. Like, I think that there are a lot of different Rockies guys that I'm going to end up targeting tonight. Raimel Tapia, another one that stands out, 3,200. So I think the Rockies are probably your best source of value.
Jules, we'll wrap with you. Value. Who are you chasing?
Yeah, if we both said we're fading Bauer, I think the top of that Rockies order makes some sense. Like Matt said, Tapia's 3,200. You got guys 3,600. You got guys in the middle of the lineup potentially for under 3K. So that makes sense to me. At Coors, 8 runs again on opening day in a Kershaw start. So it can be done. I think even the Mariners going against Johnny Cueto, you can get plenty of guys in that lineup. In the middle of that order, there are guys 4 or 5 hitters projected to be under $3,000. I haven't heard of either of them, but their names in the middle of the order. So what does it matter? And I know Johnny Cueto's not all that good anymore. So I think that just looking for the spots more than the names is more important. Yesterday, like if you played on the 1 p.m. slate, Luplow led off for Cleveland. You got a guy at 2,200 there leading off. That's ridiculous. I don't know if this was a mistake on DraftKings or what, but Nomar Mazara was hitting 6th for Detroit. He was 1,500, I think I had him in a lineup. Like, just pay attention to when these lineups actually come out. It's the first, second lineups of the year. There's going to be guys that we didn't expect to be there that are at really good values.